dust that spreads. Eric's weight bore down on me, the shield groaning under the pressure of his body. His teeth snapped just inches from my face, strands of saliva flinging across the rim as he clawed and shoved, every ounce of his strength funneled into breaking me. I pushed back with everything I had, my arms trembling, shoulders screaming, the jagged edge of rust biting into my palms. The candlestick clattered to the floor, useless. "Eric," I rasped, but the name was hollow now, a word with no anchor. His eyes were gone, drowned in red and black, staring through me like I wasn't a friend but a meal. He roared, a sound that vibrated through my bones and slammed me back against the wall. My skull rattled against plaster, spots of white bursting in my vision. I braced, gasping, the shield the only thing keeping his teeth from ripping into my throat. I couldn't bring myself to try to kill him or snap his neck, not while some part of me begged to believe he was still in there, but I couldn't hold him forever. My gaze darted around the workshop, desperate. The shelves loomed, crowded with relics and crates, blocking any clean path to the door. The windows were too narrow, barred from the inside. Every escape looked sealed. Eric snarled again, jerking the shield to the side, almost ripping it from my grip. His breath washed over me, hot, rancid, sweet with decay. My arms shook, muscles quivering, every second of resistance carved out of panic and fear. I kicked out wildly, boot thudding against his shin. He staggered, not much, but enough for me to wrench sideways. The shield's rim screeched against the wall as I slipped past him, heart hammering, lungs screaming for air. He crashed into the workbench, sending artifacts tumbling, shards of history scattering across the floor. He didn't even notice. His head whipped toward me, jaw snapping, body jerking with that same animal drive. I stumbled toward the door, every step a fight to stay upright. My fingers closed on the door handle, slick with sweat, and I yanked hard. The door gave an inch, maybe two, then stopped. I pulled again, harder this time, shoulders straining against the weight. Something scraped on the floor. My eyes darted down. The damned candlestick. One of the old ones we'd hauled back from a cathedral auction had toppled and rolled just enough to wedge itself under the frame. The door wouldn't swing open more than a sliver. No, no, no. The words rasped out of me, frantic. My free hand clawed at the base of the door, trying to shove it open, trying to kick the obstruction clear. Behind me, the footsteps quickened. Then the sound of teeth snapping. I spun just as Eric lunged, his body colliding with mine in a blur of heat and rot. His shoulder drove into my chest, slamming me back into the half-open door, the edge digging into my spine. The shield clattered from my hand, skidding uselessly across the blood-slick floor. His face was inches from mine, eyes blown wide and red, his mouth a cavern of jagged teeth. He snapped at my throat, missing by breath alone, his spit flecking my skin. The smell was unbearable, sweet, putrid, the stench of meat left too long in summer heat. I jammed my forearm across his throat, straining, my muscles burning as his teeth grazed the fabric of my sleeve. His strength was inhuman, wild, driven by something primal and unrelenting. My legs buckled as he bore down. My hand flailed desperately against the wall, searching for anything. My fingers brushed cold metal, the candlestick. I wrenched it free, the obstruction that had betrayed me now my only lifeline. Eric growled, a sound deep and guttural, pressing harder, his teeth gnashing closer to my face. With a cry that was half fear, half rage, I swung the candlestick sideways, smashing it into his temple. The impact rang out sharp and hollow, the sound of brass colliding with bone. Eric reeled, staggering, blood streaking down the side of his head. He didn't stop. He snarled and lunged again, arms flailing, hands clawing for me. But the moment was mine. I shoved him back with everything I had, forcing him off balance just long enough to wrench the door wider. The air on the other side was cooler, freer, carrying the faint scent of rain. I stumbled through, pulling the door after me. His hands clawed at the frame, his roar echoing in the narrow hall. The door slammed shut. I pressed my body against it, chest heaving. The house was silent but for the ragged drag of my breathing. I stayed pressed against the door, every muscle quivering, waiting for it to burst back open. Eric's fists pounded against the wood, each blow sending a tremor through my spine. His guttural cries bled into growls, then into a low animal scratching. And then, nothing. The silence was worse than the noise. I slid down the door, landing hard on the cold floorboards, the candlestick still clenched in my shaking hand. My chest rose and fell in uneven jerks, every breath a desperate gulp. The air tasted of dust and sweat and blood. My best friend was on the other side of that door. No, something wearing his skin was, and I had been seconds away from his teeth in my throat. I stared at my hands, at the thin streaks of his blood smeared across my skin, and felt bile burn the back of my throat. This wasn't supposed to happen, not to us. We dug through graves of forgotten empires, handled cursed masks and rotting manuscripts, flirted with legends and laughed them off with whiskey in our bellies. Nothing ever happened. Not really. But now I couldn't laugh. Not when I could still smell his breath, still feel the weight of him crushing me, still hear his bones crack under brass. I should have gone back in. I should have tried harder, forced him down, tied him, done something. But the truth gnawed at me, heavy and merciless. That wasn't Eric anymore. Whatever had crawled out of that pottery hadn't just bitten him, it had taken him. I buried my face in my hands and sat there, the sound of my pulse pounding louder than the silence around me. I don't know how long I stayed that way, but when I looked up again, the hallway was still empty, still too still. I needed help. Real help. Shoving the candlestick into the floor, I dragged myself upright, legs wobbling beneath me. My phone was on the side table, left there when Eric had insisted on one more look at the pottery. I snatched it up, the screen glowing bright in the dim hall, my thumb shaking as I hit 911. The ring felt like it took forever. When the operator answered, my voice cracked like it belonged to someone else. "My friend," I whispered, eyes locked on the workshop door. He's not right. Something bit him. Something came out of that pottery. Please, you need to send someone." Now, the operator's tone never shifted. Calm, flat, rehearsed. The kind of voice made to handle drunk dials and domestic spats. "Sir, I need you to slow down. You're saying and something bit your friend? Where is he?" "Yes," I hissed, pacing the hallway, eyes darting to the door every few seconds, half expecting it to shudder under Eric's weight again. "It came out of the pottery. He's not himself anymore. You don't understand. He..." "Sir," she cut in, clipped and cool. "What pottery? Are you under the influence of alcohol?" My stomach twisted. "No, I'm telling you, he attacked me. Please, just send someone." There was a pause, then the soft click of keys being pressed. "Units are on their way. Stay where you are." The line went dead. I didn't move, couldn't. My gaze stayed locked on the workshop door, my grip white-knuckled on the candlestick. Time stretched thin. Every second another chance for Eric to burst through. But he didn't. Only silence seeped from that room. The wail of sirens broke it at last. Blue and red lights strobed through the windows, washing over the walls like a pulse. Relief hit me, sharp and fleeting, chased almost instantly by dread. 2 officers came up the path, their boots heavy on the porch. When I opened the door, the smell of blood clung to me, and I saw the way their eyes shifted. "What happened here?" one asked, hand hovering near his holster. "My friend," I stammered, lowering the candlestick but not letting it go. "Something bit him. Something came out of the pottery, and he attacked me." Their gazes dropped to the weapon. The brass was smeared in dried streaks, dark and ugly. "Looks like you did some attacking yourself," the other officer said, voice edged with suspicion. I shook my head hard. No, you don't get it. I didn't want to hurt him. He went for me first. This was self-defense. I swear to God I was trying to hold him off. They didn't look convinced. One stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "Where's your friend now?" I swallowed, glancing at the workshop door. My mouth was dry, words sticking in my throat. "In there," I finally managed, "but he's not Eric anymore." The officers exchanged a look. One hand went to the radio on his shoulder, and in that moment, with their suspicion hanging thick in the air, I realized something worse than disbelief. If they didn't believe me, if they thought I was the danger, then the real threat, the thing that used to be Eric, was about to catch them blind. The officer's eyes lingered on the candlestick in my hand, the blood smeared thick across the brass. He lifted his chin, voice even but sharp. "Sir, I'm going to need you to drop the weapon." I froze, knuckles whitening around the slick handle. Weapon? To me, it wasn't a weapon. It was survival. The only reason I was still breathing. "It's not," I started, my throat dry. "Drop it." His tone clipped, firmer now. The second officer's hand hovered near his holster, his gaze locked on me like I might spring. On the ground. "Now, face down. Hands behind your back." My chest tightened. I glanced at the workshop door, at the silence pressing out from behind it like something waiting to be born again. I couldn't let go of the candlestick. Not with Eric in there, not with what he'd become. "Sir," the first officer snapped, voice rising, "this is not optional. Drop the weapon." Every instinct screamed to hold on, but I saw it in their faces. The suspicion, the unspoken conclusion that maybe I wasn't the victim here. Maybe I was the monster. Slowly, fingers trembling, I let the candlestick clatter to the floor. The sound echoed too loud in the hallway, final, like I'd just surrendered the last piece of safety I had. "Face down," the second barked. I hesitated again, a coil of panic in my gut. Then his tone sharpened to a blade. "Now!" The fight drained out of me. I lowered myself to the cold floor, cheek pressed to the wood, arms twisting behind me. My heart thudded against the boards as one officer moved over me, plastic zip ties rattling in his hands. That's when I saw the other one move for the workshop door. "No!" My voice cracked, high and desperate. "Don't open it, you don't understand. He's not human anymore." "Stay still," the officer above me ordered, pinning my shoulder with his knee. I thrashed against the pressure, straining to lift my head. "Please, for God's sake, don't open that door." My words were raw, torn from my throat. But the officer by the workshop didn't stop. His hand closed on the knob, and all I could do, pinned to the floor, wrists about to be bound, was scream the only warning left in me. "Don't!" The door creaked inward, slow at first. Then, all at once, Eric burst through like a storm breaking loose. He wasn't my friend anymore. He was a blur of teeth and blood and rage. The officer at the door didn't even have time to react before Eric was on him, slamming him flat to the floor. The sound that followed still claws at me when I close my eyes, the wet, tearing crunch of teeth sinking into flesh. The officer screamed, a raw, choking sound, thrusting his arm up to shield his throat. Eric bit down hard, tore a strip from his forearm like an animal at raw meat. Blood spattered across the floor, across Eric's chin, hot and steaming. The second officer lunged, a shout ripped from his chest. He rammed his shoulder into Eric, knocking him clear of his partner. Eric hit the boards with a snarl, thrashing like a beast pulled from its kill. The officer didn't pin him, didn't dare. He scrambled back, gun out, muzzle fixed square on Eric's chest. "Stay down," he barked, breath jagged. But Eric didn't even hear. He pushed himself up, blood slicked down his neck, his eyes black pits rimmed with red. He didn't hesitate. He lunged again, mouth wide, hands clawing. The gun went off. Once, twice. Then again and again, deafening in the narrow hall. Each shot slammed into Eric's body, jerking him back, blood spraying, chunks of him breaking away. But he didn't stop. He crumpled, yes, hit the ground hard, but his arms kept moving. He dragged himself forward, elbows gouging grooves into the boards, mouth gnashing, teeth snapping. The sound wasn't human anymore. It was hunger given form. The injured officer lay groaning, clutching what was left of his arm. His partner's gun wavered in his hands, voice cracking as he backed another step. Why the hell won't he stay down? And Eric crawled on, relentless, inch by inch, like death itself couldn't slow him. I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe. Eric, my friend, crawled forward in jerks and spasms, dragging his ruined body across the boards, teeth gnashing as if nothing else mattered but flesh. I should have run, I should have done something. But I just stood there, my back pressed to the wall, every muscle locked. The wounded officer's screams cut through me like steel. He writhed on the floor, clutching the shredded remains of his arm, blood pumping out in hot, red rivers. His partner kept his gun trained on Eric, voice cracking as he tried to steady him. "Hold on. Stay with me, just hold on." But his words were drowned by the other man's ragged shrieks. His body bucked, twisted, his veins darkening under his skin like ink racing through cracked glass. I'd seen it before, just minutes ago. The way Eric changed, the way his eyes turned black, his veins writhed, his body betrayed him. And then it happened again. The officer's screams broke off into guttural snarls. His fingers clawed at the floor. His head snapped toward his partner, his face no longer his own. His pupils shrank to pinpricks, the whites clouding, his mouth foaming with blood. "Jesus Christ," the standing officer whispered, his gun shifting between Eric and his partner. Then the horror broke loose. The injured officer lunged, fast as a striking snake, straight into his partner's chest. They crashed against the wall, gun skittering, and before the man could even shout, teeth sank into his neck. The sound wasn't a bite. It was a rip, a tearing, a feast. Blood sprayed in arcs across the plaster, spattering the floor, the ceiling, the air itself. The second officer's scream was cut short, choked by blood flooding his throat. He gurgled, hands weakly pushing, but his strength bled out with every savage pull of flesh from his throat. His body convulsed, went slack, his eyes staring wide in frozen shock. I stood rooted, my heart a hammer in my ribs, my stomach roiling. My mind kept clawing for reason, for explanation, but there was none. Only the wet, obscene sounds of chewing. Two men in uniform, sent here to uphold order, were tearing each other apart like animals. And all I could do was watch. One of them looked at me. It was the officer who'd just been bitten, his face slick with blood, his mouth still wet from tearing into his partner's throat. His head jerked unnaturally, eyes locking on mine. That hunger, the same hollow, merciless hunger I'd seen in Eric, fixed itself on me. That's when the dam broke inside me. Every instinct screamed. My body moved before my mind caught up. I bolted, stumbling through the house, wrenching open the front door with blood still on my hands. The sunlight hit me like a slap, too bright, too real. It's already morning. And then, tires screeched. A second squad car skidded to a stop in front of my house. 2 fresh officers jumped out, guns already drawn, their boots pounding the pavement as they closed on me. "Hands up!" "What the hell happened here?" one shouted, his voice sharp, commanding. I couldn't form words at first. My chest heaved, lungs burning, mind spiraling. Finally, I managed to choke it out. "Run!" They didn't listen. They never do. The front door burst open behind me, the wood splintering against the wall. The 2 infected officers staggered into the daylight, blood still dripping from their mouths, uniforms torn and soaked. Their eyes. God, their eyes weren't human anymore. The new officers froze, confusion flashing to horror. They opened fire, guns barking in sharp succession, each shot hammering through the street. Bullets tore into the infected, jerking their bodies with every impact. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. The infected barreled into them, heedless of wounds, teeth bared. One went down instantly, throat ripped open before his scream even left his mouth. The other fired until his pistol clicked empty, then vanished under a flurry of limbs and teeth. His screams cut off in a wet gurgle. I couldn't stay. I spun, lunged for the nearest cruiser, my hand slipping on the door handle, slick with my own sweat. It gave, and I threw myself inside. The smell of gun oil and leather hit me, grounding me just enough to act. Through the windshield I saw them, neighbors, bystanders, people who'd come running when the sirens first screamed through the streets. They stood frozen on the sidewalks, mouths open, eyes wide, watching the carnage unfold. No one moved, no one screamed. They just stared, as if their minds couldn't make sense of what they were seeing. I wanted to shout at them, to tell them to run, but my throat was locked tight. My hands shook on the wheel, the world outside unraveling in front of me, and I finally understood. The nightmare wasn't contained anymore. It was spilling out, infecting the daylight. From the safety of the cruiser, I could only watch. The 2 infected officers didn't linger over the men they'd just torn apart. Their heads snapped toward the sidewalks, toward the cluster of neighbors who'd gathered in the commotion. And then they charged. "Run!" I wanted to scream, but the words stuck in my throat. One officer slammed into an older man in a flannel shirt, driving him down onto the lawn. The man's scream ripped through the air, high and thin, as teeth tore into his face. The other officer hit a young woman, no older than 20, dragging her into the street, clawing and biting like she wasn't human at all. Her hands beat uselessly at his back, her cries muffled by his mouth ripping chunks of flesh from her neck. The crowd dissolved into chaos. Some froze, some screamed, some bolted. But it didn't matter, because then I saw him. Eric. He staggered out of the house, swaying at first, then steadying, his eyes scanning the street like a predator sizing up prey. His shirt was soaked in dried blood, his jaw slick, his face hollow. For a heartbeat I thought, prayed, it wasn't him anymore, just some husk. But then he moved fast. He bounded down the porch steps with an animal's force, his head snapping toward the nearest sound. A man fumbling with his phone, dialing, too slow, too blind to the horror bearing down on him. Eric's body crashed into him, and the phone clattered across the pavement. The man's scream broke the spell, and I realized I was gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles had gone white. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. All I could do was sit in that cruiser and watch as the world outside my house, the world I thought I knew, tore itself apart under the teeth of men I once trusted and a friend I once loved. A sharp rap on the window jolted me out of my trance. I whipped my head to the side and nearly screamed. A woman was pressed against the glass, her palms flat, her face streaked with tears and sweat. Her mouth opened and closed, words spilling I couldn't hear through the barrier, but I didn't need sound to know what she was saying. "Help me, please." Behind her, chaos reigned, the infected officers tearing, feeding. Eric hunched over his victim like a beast. The air was alive with screams, with the wet sounds of flesh being ripped apart. But all I could see were her eyes, wide, pleading, desperate. My hand twitched toward the door handle. For a moment, I almost did it. Instinct told me to let her in, to pull her into the cruiser and lock the world out, to save one life if I couldn't save them all. My fingers curled around the latch, knuckles trembling, my breath caught halfway between panic and mercy. But then her scream cut through the glass. Her head jerked back violently, her body dragged from the window by something I couldn't see at first. The second officer, the young one, had her by the shoulder. His teeth sank into her neck, blood spraying against the side of the cruiser like someone had thrown paint across the door. Her nails screeched down the glass as she was yanked away, leaving a trail of red smears where her hands had been. I froze, the latch still pressed under my fingers. If I'd opened that door... My stomach twisted, bile rising in my throat. I yanked my hand back, clenching it into a fist, hating myself for even thinking I could have done something. Number. There was no saving anyone now. I sank deeper into the seat, shaking, watching through the windshield as the street, the place I'd lived my whole life, became a slaughterhouse. Then it happened. Through the blood-streaked glass, I saw him again. Eric. He lurched into view, his steps uneven but determined, as if some instinct guided him. His head jerked, scanning, teeth grinding against one another. He wasn't feeding now, he was searching. And then he found me. His body swerved toward the cruiser, and in moments his hand slapped against the hood, his face pressed close to the glass, eyes pale and cloudy but locked, like he could feel my heartbeat inside. Thud. The car rocked as he slammed against it again. My lungs froze. I dared not move, dared not breathe. But then, another shadow staggered into view. A man in a torn polo, his face a mask of gore. He pressed against the passenger side, smearing blood across the window as he pawed at the door. A third figure joined, slamming the trunk with open palms, teeth gnashing in fury, surrounded. That's when I noticed it. The flashing reflection on the glass. The dull wail that had become background noise in my skull. The siren. How could I missed this? The cruiser's lights were still strobing red and blue, its speaker wailing faintly into the light. I'd been so deep in shock, so wrapped in fear, I hadn't realized. I hadn't turned it off. And now they were here because of it, drawn like moths to flame. My fingers shook on the wheel, trying to decide. Slow escape or loud flight. Both seemed like suicide. I panicked. Before I knew what I was doing, I twisted the key the wrong way. The engine coughed and died. The lights blinked once, then cut out. The siren stuttered into silence. Even the dashboard went off. I'd killed everything, engine, lights, battery, pulled the key clean out in blind terror. Now, there was nothing but silence. Except for them. Eric's breath smeared across the glass, fogging it in bursts. His palms squeaked against the windshield as he pawed, pressed, dragged his nails. The man in the torn polo groaned low, his face mashed sideways against the passenger window, blood streaking across it like a grotesque brushstroke. The one at the trunk thudded again, a hollow echo through the frame. Every instinct screamed at me to do something. Restart the car, crawl out the other side, scream until someone came, but I didn't move. I couldn't. I sat as still as the dead, eyes fixed straight ahead, hands clenched so tight on the keys they cut into my palm. Don't look at them. Don't breathe too hard. Don't exist. The cruiser swayed under their weight, every push and scrape rattling into my bones. The smell leaked in faintly through the vents. Rot, copper, wet earth. The cruiser rocked again, faint but enough to rattle the coins in the cup holder. I didn't move. Eric's face stayed pressed to the windshield, lips peeled back, fogging the glass with each ragged breath. Another body groaned against the passenger door, blood streaking down the window as it dragged a hand along the frame. Behind me, something hammered the trunk, steady and hollow, like a drumbeat. And I sat there clutching the keys, knowing they were useless. Time lost its shape. Seconds, minutes, it all bled together, measured only by the scraping of nails and the low animal sounds outside. In the stillness, my thoughts turned inward. I thought about the mornings I'd wasted, the people I'd kept at arm's length, the comfort of routines I'd assumed would last forever. Years of chasing relics from the past, while ignoring the fragile present. And now, the past had come for me in the form of an ancient thing that should never have been unearthed. Eric, my best friend, my partner in all of it. And here he was, slamming the hood, hungry for me. I pressed my back to the seat, forcing myself not to flinch with each groan or shove against the cruiser. I couldn't fight them, I couldn't flee. All I could do was sit, silent and small, and pray the glass would hold a little longer. And in that silence, the truth crept in. I wasn't hiding from strangers. I was hiding from the life I'd lived and the monster it had birthed. Thanks for listening. If you want to survive the apocalypse, like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments. What would you do to survive this?